What's up, crew? Team Room 219. Missing you guys. Hope you're doing well. We got our second story of the week coming up right now. We're very excited about it. Some of these stories, since we've gone on this weird little break that we're on, have been awesome. We had Thomas Edison and Ben Franklin last week. We read and learned the history of the bicycle in A Bumpy Ride earlier this week. And then today, we are going to be reading, and believe it or not, it's actually the first time we've been reading this genre, which is narrative poetry. The title of this week's story is Rosie Revere, Engineer. Think about what you know about poetry, and think about what I just read. The title, Rosie Revere, Engineer. Revere, Engineer. Oh, those words rhyme. Do a lot of poets like to rhyme? Think about it. Narrative poetry tells a story using a poetic structure. Narrative poetry tells a story through a plot, the main events of the story. We all know what a plot is. We talk about that all the time in all the different stories that we've read throughout the course of this year. Narrative poems include sound effects to reinforce the meaning of the poem. Narrative poems often include word sounds such as alliteration, onomatopoeia, to emphasize particular words or ideas. Alliteration and onomatopoeia, those figurative language words, man, they throw us off. But believe it or not, you all know what they are. You may not know the actual title of them, like onomatopoeia and alliteration, but we'll talk about those as we are moving through the story today. All right, so with no further ado, if you guys, I know some of you are really good at looking at your table of contents, but if you did not, we're reading Rosie Revere, Engineer. The author is Andrea Beatty, and it's illustrated by David Roberts. Okay, folks, we're going to start off on paragraph 1. This is the story of Rosie Revere, who dreamed of becoming a great engineer. In Lila Greer's classroom at Blue River Creek, young Rosie sat shyly, not daring to speak. But when no one saw her, she peeked in the trash for treasures to add to her engineer's stash. And late at night, Rosie rolled up her sleeves and built in her hideaway under the eaves. Okay, guys, so we see that poetic structure that we're talking about. What are they doing, right? They're rhyming. I want you right now to put a box around the words that rhyme together in those first 2 paragraphs that we see there. Okay, in those first 2 paragraphs. Now, let's move on to paragraph 3. Let's see if that poetic structure continues. Alone in her attic, the moon high above, dear Rosie made gadgets and gizmos she loved. And when she grew sleepy, she hid her machines far under the bed where they'd never be seen. When Rosie was young, she had not been so shy. She worked with her hair swooping over one eye and made fine inventions for uncles and aunts, a hot dog dispenser and helium pants. All right, I'm loving it, right? I'm loving the rhyming words. Engineer. What is an engineer? Okay, that is one of your vocabulary words this week that hopefully you got a chance to look at. It's a great career choice for those of you who are really, that can use your imagination, that are really good with numbers, my mathematicians out there. An engineer is a wonderful, wonderful job, and it gets you those creative juices flowing. And clearly our friend Rosie over here, Rosie Revere, is a budding engineer. So let's continue on. Just to let you guys know, if you're not there, we're on page 244. Page 244. If you're not there, please get there. Paragraph 5. The uncle she loved most was zookeeper Fred. She made him a hat to keep snakes off his head. From parts of a fan and some cheddar cheese spray, which everyone knows keeps the pythons away. What's a python? Zookeeper Fred, she mentioned snakes. Okay, just saying, these are the ways to use your resources, okay? If you don't know what a python is, you can make a prediction, right? All right, well, they mentioned a snake, he's a zookeeper. Yes, a python is a specific snake. Paragraph 6. And when it was finished, young Rosie was proud. But Fred slapped his knee and chuckled aloud. He laughed till he wheezed and his eyes filled with tears, all to the horror of Rosie Revere, who stood there embarrassed, perplexed, and dismayed. She looked at the cheese hat, then looked away. I love it, Fred hooted. Oh, truly I do. But Rosie Revere knew that could not be true. She stuck the cheese hat on the back of her shelf, and after that day kept her dreams to herself. Why do you think Rosie was upset? Okay, what did Zookeeper Fred do that made her upset? This is a really good point to make, because even though I know that some of us do this sometimes, we may laugh and not intentionally be mean, but sometimes you have to take into account some other folks' feelings, right? Before you start cracking up, they may take it the wrong way. It sounds like Rosie did that. But let me read that those last two sentences here. She stuck the cheese hat on the back of her shelf, and after that day kept her dreams to herself. I don't know. I mean, I hope she doesn't, but maybe she'll break out of her shell here in the next few pages. If you're not there, guys, we're on page 246, paragraph 7. And that's how it went until one autumn day. Her oldest relation showed up for a stay. Her great aunt Rose was a true dynamo who worked building airplanes a long time ago. She told Rosie tales of things she had done and goals she had checked off her list, one by one. I know every single one of you out there right now is smiling to yourself, because we are extremely good at setting goals. Every plan should have a goal. If you go into every day without a goal, then guess what? You're just going to mosey on through and you're not going to get anything done. We know the importance of setting goals. She gave a sad smile as she looked to the sky. The only thrill left on my list is to fly. But time never lingers as long as it seems. I'll chalk that one up to the old lady's dreams. Now, two more vocabulary words, and they give you the definition of each. Dynamo. A person who is a dynamo has a lot of energy and is very good at what she does. Lingers. When something lingers, it remains for a long time. It lingers along. Some of you guys linger in the hallway when we're walking to special. I see you guys. You know who I'm talking about. Paragraph number 9. That night, as Rosie lay wide-eyed in bed, a daring idea crept into her head. Could she build a gizmo to help her aunt fly? She looked at the cheese hat and said, no, not I. It's that negative thinking, right? That one experience that she had with Zookeeper Fred is now kind of affecting what she's going to do moving forward. Let's hope that it doesn't. But questions are tricky, and some hold on tight. And this one kept Rosie awake through the night. So when dawn approached and red streaks lit the sky, young Rosie knew just how to make her aunt fly. Getting exciting. Right now would be a great time for you to make a prediction about what you think is going to happen. You've read quite a bit so far about our character, Rosie Revere, and her goal and what she's trying to do, and make a prediction. See if it comes true. Paragraph 11. She worked and she worked till the day was half gone, then hauled her Cheesecopter out to the lawn to give her invention a test just to see the ridiculous flop it might turn out to be. Strapped into the cockpit, she flipped on the switch. The Hello Cheesecopter sputtered and twitched. It floated a moment and whirled round and round, then froze for a heartbeat and crashed to the ground. They also give you a definition of whirled in here. Something that is whirled, turned around several times. So if any of you guys have ever seen a helicopter, which I'm sure many of you have, they have two propellers, one up top that whirls around and then one in the back. You can see the illustration. It's a pretty awesome illustration if you're looking at it now on page 248 and 249. Let's continue. Then Rosie heard laughter and turned round to see the old woman laughing and slapping her knee. She laughed till she wheezed and her eyes filled with tears, all to the horror of Rosie Revere, who thought, oh no, never, not ever again will I try to build something to sputter or spin, or build with a lever, a switch, or a gear, and never will I be a great engineer. So, what is Rosie Revere letting other people do? What is she letting them do? She's letting them affect her in a negative way, right? She turned round to leave, but the great-great-aunt Rose grabbed hold of young Rosie and pulled her close and hugged her and kissed her and started to cry. You did it, hooray! It's the perfect first try. This great flop is over. It's time for the next. Young Rosie was baffled, embarrassed, perplexed. I failed, said dear Rosie. It's just made of trash. Didn't you see it? The Cheesecopter crashed. Baffled, right? So what does baffled mean? If you are baffled, you are confused. Moving on to the next page here. So you have to think, what do you think is going to happen now that her aunt just told her what she did? Yes, said her great aunt, it crashed, that is true. But first, did just what it needed to do. Before it crashed, Rosie, before that, it flew. Your brilliant first flop was a raging success. Come on, let's get busy and on to the next. She handed a notebook to Rosie Revere, who smiled at her aunt as it all became clear. Life might have its failures, but this was not it. The only true failure can come if you quit. Whew. So we talk about this all the time. There's a sign in our room, okay, that says, we learn from our mistakes. If you don't fail, you'll never learn. We're all over to page 252 if you're not here. Some great illustrations on this page as well. They worked till the sun sneaked away to its bed. Aunt Rosie tied her headscarf around Rosie's head and sent her to sleep with a smile ear to ear to dream the bold dreams of a great engineer. At Blue River Creek, all the kids in grade 2 build gizmos and gadgets and doohickeys too. With each perfect failure, they all stand and cheer, but none quite as proudly as Rosie Revere. So what is the lesson that Rosie learned, guys? It's an extremely important lesson. Extremely important. All right? It's okay to make mistakes, and you have to fail in order to learn, right? That's essential, and that's what the lesson that we learn in this story. She got down on herself when she thought that the zookeeper Fred was laughing at her, and then she also thought that her aunt was laughing at her, but her aunt taught her an invaluable lesson, all right? You have to fail in order to grow. If you just are great at everything you do, you're never going to get better at anything, all right? So it's an extremely, extremely important theme. I hope that some of your predictions did come true if you made them. Again, I wrote some questions in the discussion that you're going to have to answer. If you want to challenge yourself, do the collaborative discussion with someone that you live with. I think it's a great idea. You can fill it in your My Book. You can share about it in the discussion board if you'd like. I really miss you guys. I hope you're safe and healthy right now. Peace.